right. Well, I'm so glad this week, in the middle of everything, to have member of Knesset Simcha Rothman joining me today. Simcha, as the chairman of the Knesset Constitution, Law, and Justice Committee, has really been the architect of the judicial reform package, getting it through to law. And of course, it's kind of stumbled, and now it's sort of been sidelined and moved to the president's residence for adjudication. So I'm so glad to have you here this week, Simcha, to tell me, what's going on, and to talk about a couple of other issues that also really interest our viewers here at the Caroline Glick Show. So the first thing, before we do anything else, can you just give us a little review? Why is the issue of judicial reform, of legal reform in Israel so important?
So first, thank you for having me. And I think that once people understand really the why, they understand the urgency to make the change, and why in Israel it became, everyone now agrees that there is a need for a reform. It wasn't the case a few months ago, but now when you check what people think, coalition and opposition voters, they all understand that there is a need for a reform. So that's why I'm optimistic, despite the background that you described. So let's talk in very short why it's so important. In two words, you have zero accountability in Israel. It's a complaint that you hear a lot, and the judicial system is one of the major reasons that in Israel we lack accountability. We are recording this now. I want to give 3 examples that people will understand the issue. We are now recording in the week of Lag BaOmer. Right. We all remember, sadly, 2 years ago, what happened in Meron in Lag BaOmer in Israel. The most casualties for...
Yeah, how many people were killed there? It was
more than 40.
Right, it was overcrowding, it was poorly organized, people got stuck in this sort of cul-de-sac and they were trying to move forward and they just got crushed.
So it's the largest civil catastrophe that happened in Israel, and one of the largest ever anyway. So this catastrophe that happened in Meron, there was, of course, an investigative committee to check who's to be blamed, where were the problems, and people forget. And I'm now in the coalition, and he is in the opposition, and I don't like to compliment too much a member of the opposition, but Yair Lapid, he was the Treasury Minister, and he in 2013 saw this problem, and it's a problem that many people spoke about way before.
The way that it was set up.
The way it's set up in Meron. And he decided to take away to the possession of the government the entire area and then manage it in a central position and solve all those problems. It was 2013. Since then, someone, of course, went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court canceled this decision and now basically appointed a new management for the site, for the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai grave site, that was made of 5 different people. We saw 5 all mess, and it was the justice, the chief legal advisor, and the court that basically told to the elected officials that wanted to solve the problem, you cannot solve it. And then something bad happens. Who do we go for to answer? The investigative committee that, of course, is headed by a former Supreme Court justice. By the way, one of the justices that were involved in this bad decision to begin with, because she's an expert. She created the problem, so she's now, she left us.
Right. She's now deceased, Miriam Shor, but she was
the one who was involved in creating the problem in some way. But of course, she will never investigate the court role in this issue. And you will ask, the minister, did he know? Did he not know? Did he do enough? But you will never ask about the justice system, never investigate it. When the elected officials did what they had to do in a good way, and who stopped them was the court. And the court, zero accountability. You cannot even investigate its role. So that's one example. A second example is fighting terror. In this Knesset, we passed a law, coalition and opposition together, to take away citizenship from people, citizens of Israel, that are getting paid by the Palestinian Authority to kill Jews. They murdered, and then they get compensation and money from the Palestinian Authority. And they get extra. According to the Palestinian Authority law, they get extra money because they have an Israeli citizenship, because it's easier to make the terror act with the Israeli citizenship. No, we passed this law in this Knesset. Waste of time. Because the court will ignore it or cancel it, as it did to many, many similar laws in the past.
Right.
So you have a coalition and opposition that have a certain way to fight terror, and the court just negates this way. And the third example is the ultra-Orthodox draft law, which is a big problem in Israel. It's going around in the system in Israel for 30 years, even more. And any solutions that the body politics of Israel, the Knesset, tries to bring to this issue, and there were many solutions, good, bad, some I like, some I dislike, is canceled by the court. And we're destined to go over and over to this social, political, economical fight, over and over again, and we can never get to any agreement.
Because you have a justice
Because
system.
whatever we decide in the Knesset is just a draft to the court that cancels it and says, okay, you fought for 3 years to get to some decent agreement on what to do on this burning issue. Okay, now fight again for 3 more years because you didn't fight enough.
Not only that, the real reason that we entered into the electoral morass of 4 elections in a row.
5.
Well, 4, and then you had the post-Zionist government led by...
Who also was not able to deal with this issue.
Right, but I'm saying you had 4, and then you got this minority government or whatever, and the reason was the draft law, that they required the government to pass a different one.
So
It's like the one they passed, and then they gave them an amount of time. Otherwise, you're out.
So we have 3 examples. And by the way, there was a law that was passed to deal with the draft issue that Yair Lapid signed. Amendment number 19 was passed with Yesh Atid votes. So the most extreme the party that fought against giving this exemption for the ultra-Orthodox signed the bill and passed it in the Knesset. It wasn't what I thought. It wasn't what the Likud thought, but it passed in the Knesset. And the court canceled it. So you don't even get at the most extreme part of the Knesset that wants something. It's not enough for the court. So you can never get to an agreement. So if we talk about zero accountability on almost any issue, political right or
100% authority.
100% authority, instability in government, and inability to fight terror. And I can give few more examples. I wrote a book with 7, 8, 9 examples of very pressing issue. Housing prices in Israel. Any issue you put a finger, you look and you say, how come the political powers did not do anything to solve it? And then you dig down and you check and you see that they did. They did many things, but it was all negated by the actions of the court that never pays the price.
Okay, so that's why it's important. But now what happened was that, so this government comes in, it's elected, the 4 members, the 4 coalition parties, the parties in the coalition led by Likud, they all ran on platforms committed to judicial reform, legal reform, reform of the Attorney General's office, state prosecution, and the Supreme Court. You come into office shortly after the government is formed. Justice Minister Yariv Levin, and this is his signature issue, his entire political career, he lays out a 4-part plan for judicial reform, which is supposed to just be the first stage, right, of an overhaul of the legal system in Israel and the introduction of accountability to our justices and to our legal fraternity in Israel. Okay. And then all hell breaks loose, right? All hell breaks loose. And you have massive rioting on the streets, blocking highways, attacking ministers. You're, under 24/7 bodyguard protection because of threats on your life and attacks against you and your community by the left. So Israel is experiencing, even now they continue, this unprecedented campaign, massively funded, of mass demonstrations, attacks, demonization of the government, of its ministers, of its members of Knesset, and it just stops. And now and this is like after President Yitzhak Herzog came out. You guys had been meeting, having these negotiations to try to come up with a solution. And with much anticipation, he comes out and he gives what he refers to as the people's plan, which is really just his plan.
It's not even his plan.
It's maybe
extreme left plan.
It's the extreme left's plan. So shocked the hell out of me, I've got to say. And it had nothing that we voted for. It had nothing that we need in order to introduce accountability to our judicial system. And now after he did that, Prime Minister Netanyahu decided to try to calm the waters here socially by going back to the same guy, to President Herzog with members of the opposition who lost the election, meaning actually there are lots more of them than members of the coalition together at the president's house or other areas behind closed doors without any public exposure. And they're supposed to now come up with so what does this mean for judicial reform? Is it dead? I mean, people have been saying on the news, it's dead, it's never going to happen.
So I think it's, what you described, of course, is true, but I think that now that's one half of the picture.
Okay.
The other half of the picture is really that there is a wide understanding that did not exist in the past because of this issue. It doesn't matter.
Where do you see that wide understanding showing? Because the protests are continuing.
The protests will continue, and by the way, most of the protests have nothing to do with the judicial reform. Even if you ask the people who go and protest, they talk about the draft law now. They talk about the fact that Netanyahu has cases against him in the court, and against the ultra-Orthodox, and against
just against the government,
religious coercion, you name it. They don't like the fact that they lost the elections. Plain simple. And most of this actions were planned way before any judicial reform was put on the table by Yariv Levin.
Yeah,
It was, of course,
Ehud Barak gave this interview to Chatham House, where he said that this was planned 3 months before the government was formed, before the elections, on anticipation that the right wing would win, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to set the house on fire. And they used the blueprint of a book put out by some Columbia professors about how to bring down democratically elected government.
And they work like that. So some would say, without the mistakes that we have done about the judicial reform, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't succeed so well. Maybe not. We can never know. That's the claim. And of course, we, as a party, and me and myself, we did not think it's a good idea to stop. Because once you cave under pressure, once you give up to violence, and what we experience is violence, not demonstrations, not a peaceful way of the public to announce what they think about in a peaceful way. We see disruptions, they call it. We don't try to demonstrate, we try to disrupt, right, which is a big difference. That's not something that in the past, when that kind of behavior was acted by protesters, it was dealt like with even without the police. It was dealt with the Shin Bet because it was about the security of the state. If you try to block roads, you're not protesting. If you try,
and now that's not true. You have people who are blocking highway junctions, which is a very serious.
Even worse, the police sometimes blocks for them. They don't even have to come.
So they're not. There's no punishment. They blocked civilian aircraft. They blocked the path to Ben Gurion Airport a couple months ago. To the best of my knowledge, nobody's standing trial for that.
That's just to show you that we have a system who is deeply, deeply in need of a reform. Right. Because there is zero accountability also with the police. There is zero accountability with the justice system. That they don't answer, why are they not prosecuting what they have prosecuted in the past? So
has this all been derailed, this thing that we need more than anything else? I mean, to have a justice and rule of law in Israel?
I think that the riots the demonstrations, the behavior of the police and the justice system concerning the riots and the demonstrations proved to anyone who still had the doubt that there is a need to reform, that there is a need to reform. So that's why I know, polls show it, there is a need for the reform. From the beginning, also Yariv Levin, also myself, we said we want to pass as much that can be passed with wide agreement. We don't want it to be the winner takes it all kind of mechanism, because when you want to do a big reform, and there is a wide understanding, especially amongst elected officials, that there is a need for the reform. For example, I can take almost everything that Gideon Sa'ar wrote in the past and sign, and it will pass. Why not? He's for many years, Gideon Sa'ar has called for reforms in the justice system. To the most of the reforms that I agree. Now he says, no. Whatever I agreed in the past.
How do you explain that? That was one of my questions I was going to get to later, but you raised it. So how do you explain the way that leftists or former right-wingers like Gideon Sa'ar, Daniel Friedman, who was a justice minister.
So Daniel Friedman, for example.
They all just sort of walked
But Daniel
away.
Friedman is a good example, because Daniel Friedman, I was called by someone who arranged the protests against me. And he said, I want you to sit with Daniel Friedman, with Professor Daniel Friedman, former justice minister, law professor, and trying to get to some common ground. And I said, of course, immediately. And it was before the stop, way before. And what came out of it was what was called the Friedman El-Bashan program. Two law professors, one of them is Friedman, one of them is El-Bashan, and other two, one is Giora Island, was the head of the security,
The national security advisor.
and Giora Yaron, who is also some person who is
Former general,
but also investor in high tech and very known people. And they made a plan, and immediately the response by Yariv Levin and myself, despite the fact that the plan was not exactly our dream, but we do want to have negotiation and agreement, we said, okay, let's start to negotiate based on that immediately. No strings attached, no prior demands. We will negotiate based on this. And immediately it was published in a Monday. On Tuesday, Yariv Levin and myself sat with them, with all four of them, and we spoke and we learned what they're offering. And we said, we are willing to negotiate based on this offer by Friedman, who does not like the entire program of Yariv Levin. We will negotiate based on that immediately. Yair Lapid, Gideon Sa'ar, Gantz immediately bashed them. They blamed them in whatever you can imagine. Now they cooperators. No,
collaborators,
cooperators. They were actually secret agent. All the lies that you can imagine about this program. When we said, we really mean what we say, we would love to have the reform with the widest agreement that we can, and we are willing to find common ground. But we need to have someone from the other side to do it, and the opposition does not want to come.
How do you explain that?
Because they think, some of them, I think mistakenly, that by blocking the reform, they will make the government fall. I don't think they will make the government fall. I think they will. It maybe postpone it a little bit, but I think that some people in the opposition they basically joined the program that you said before by Ehud Barak to bring down a democratically elected government. They don't play by the rules anymore. When you have members of the opposition burning the streets down by words or by actions, they don't play by the rules. You mentioned the last government. I disliked last government a lot. I spoke a lot against it. I would never ever think to praise someone that calls for using a weapon. I would never ever think about telling soldiers to skip to refuse go to the army, to the reserve duty, to the pilots. Never ever this kind of never ever I would think to go outside of Israel and we had the ability to do so, of course, we could go outside of Israel and say, listen, Muslim Brotherhood is considered a terrorist organization in your country. Stop any of your connections with the state of Israel because they have no Muslim Brotherhood inside government. It would create a damage with the state of Israel, but we would never think of doing it because we are all on the same ship here. If we will drill down, we will drown. So we didn't do it, and they stopped having this basic decency and dignity to not do this kind of thing. People went and actually asked foreign government or foreign companies not to invest in Israel. If someone else would do it, we would call it BDS. But some people actually, from the politics, went and did it.
So here, I have a couple of questions. So, and you can answer them together or separately, how you like. So one thing is, and it just gets back to the same question. I want this reform more than anything. I've been writing about this as well for over 20 years and why we need judicial reform. But how do we get there from here? That's one question, because we're looking at it. We see that you have an opposition that is not playing by the rules. They're playing by the Black Lives Matter rules. Let's light Israel on fire, make the government collapse because of the pressure that it's constantly under. And by the way, we see pressure building, right? With Ben Gvir, for instance, in Otzma Yehudit, boycotting government meetings.
Yeah, but that's another issue.
Right, but still, it's causing distress and destabilizing the coalition because you're not getting the stuff done that you were elected to do. So that's one question. How do we get back on track? And it plays to the second question, which is about President Herzog. So we were all thinking that President Herzog was going to go along with the El Bashan Friedman thing, and then he didn't.
Or some other plans. We had other plans. Even by the president's residency, the Bashan Friedman was like a side game.
Okay, so
but even
we thought that there was a real discourse there on matters of substance, and in the end, what he offered was essentially nothing. He said, "Oh yeah, you have
worse than nothing."
Well, but he had said you need legal procedures to be. Oh, you need more judges. You need, he started going to the quantity, not to the actual nature of the problem, but to, side issues. And what we're hearing, the little that we're hearing about the discourse in the president's house is that that's all the agreement that they've reached. In other words, he put a top level of what the left is going to be willing to do, which is essentially nothing. We'll give you more judges to make it easier so that
it will be easier for you to intervene in government action.
Right, and also that you're a normal person, not a politician. You sue somebody, and it's not going to take 15 years to get a judgment.
More judges will not bring this outcome, by the way.
That's fine. I'm not even talking about whether it's a good idea or not, but I'm saying that all of his things were very human resources and nothing substantive, right? And so when you say that this is what the president offered after how many weeks they were having these discussions in the president's house, then if you're Yair Lapid or Benny Gantz,
he will never accept anything
more than what he did. So
what's the point?
So A, what's the point? And B, to put it all back together with the first question, what can happen in order to actually enable judicial reform at this point when the government has agreed to try to reach a compromise, and clearly they're not going to reach one?
So, of course, some people in the Likud already said that if they will see that there is the will to negotiate from our side, from the Likud,
you're talking about
Yariv Levin, like Yulia Edelstein and others,
David Biton,
if they see that we are willing to negotiate, and that's the other side that is not coming to the table or making very crazy demands, they will be back to. They will return to be fully committed to the reform, and will vote of it no matter what.
So you're talking
saying
that was another
like an inner, yeah.
That's another aspect.
Inner PR.
That they were talking about.
Inner coalition PR.
That there's a question, right? Okay, so there were a few Likud members who are considered sort of more mamby-pamby about the reform, that this isn't the thing that's driving them. Yuli Edelstein is one of them, David Biton,
And of course, Gallant was the one defense minister
who torpedoed it to begin with.
Yeah.
So you have these three, and so that was going to bring down the number of votes from 64, which is the coalition, to 61, and there was some question about whether if
the other people are more moderate, less, but I also
that it would have had a Knesset majority.
You're not only talking about the people, Gallant, Adelstein, and we're not only talking about them. Some of them, not all of them, represent some kind of constituency that believes that we need to show more willingness to compromise.
Okay.
So it's not only politicians, it's politicians and public. And the people in the public that believe that we need to show more willingness to compromise or bought into the idea that was sold, that it was untruthful, if you ask me, that we are not willing to negotiate or not willing to compromise to begin with. That was the campaign that was running. If they see that the offers that come from the Likud in the president's residency and outside of the president's residency are making sense, and yet the opposition is not coming, they will return back to their senses and say, okay, we tried. They don't want to come, we will go forward. So that's one kind of ideas that make it worthwhile to try to find a negotiation. And again, because I'm a more glass half full kind of guy, more optimistic, I want to tell you that I think that even the worst compromise that the President Herzog offered, what he called mitveh ha'am,
the people's proposal,
that of course it wasn't, but even there he recognized some key components of the judicial system and the judicial and the court that are wrong and needs fixing. So even if we agree only on that, we already did a very good thing. I'm not saying to accept it as a whole. I'm saying even President Herzog understood that a veto to sitting judges who gets in does not make any sense. Okay? One thing we can agree on. Even he understood that we need to make sure that reasonability does not bring the court to manage the government. Okay? It's even in
that's the reasonableness clause where they said that it doesn't matter what the law says. If they decide subjectively that something is unreasonable, then they're going to strike it down.
Any government decision, any appointment, there is no equivalent to that in the world. We can't even explain to American audience. Just imagine that someone will go and tell Biden and go to appeal directly to the Supreme Court of the U.S. and say, Biden, dear President Biden, I don't think that Blinken is doing such a good job. You have to fire him. It's unreasonable that you're not firing Blinken. And it will go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, you know what? I think Blinken is not doing such a good job. It's unreasonable for you, Biden, you have to fire him, and they will give an order to Biden to fire Blinken. If that's
exactly what just
happening in Israel, it will never happen in the U.S. or any other normal country.
No, in America now, the Democrats are actually upset, right? They want to pack the court because the Republicans were able to get a majority of their appointees on the court. And now
imagine how furious they will be if some organization from the right in America will go directly to the Supreme Court, will ask to fire Blinken and some other minister or secretary, and the court will accept because the court is right-wing and he thinks that the left is in power unjust. So that's the kind of thing that we need to address. So even on those key issues, and also about the way the legal advisory works, which again does not make any sense, there are some key issues that we can reach an understanding. I believe that if someone in the opposition or in the public that has some weight to his view will accept this reasonable solution, we can go forward and keep the things that are not agreed to wait for the future. The problem is that members of the opposition, and that's what you asked me in the beginning, what happened to Gideon Saar, what happened to Matan Kahana, what happened to other members of the opposition that used to be very for judicial reform, and now they don't want. And of course, the answer is politics. They don't want this government to succeed. They will do anything in their power to block government action. Some of them enjoy the fact that the streets are burning. Some of them are upset, but they don't have the willpower to stand to some of their voters and do what they think it's true. Again, what they think. I don't want them to do what I think it's true. I want them to do what they think it's true. And they're not doing it. And then they, of course, announce that they will not be in opposition to the state of Israel, but to the government. But the way they behave as an opposition to the state of Israel, not to the government. And again, I made this challenge public, and I will be happy to stand behind it. I will accept all the legislation that Gideon Sa'ar offered in the past about the judicial system, and I will sign it to the word if he is going with me, and he's not coming. And Matan Kahana the same, and Zev Elkin the same, and Sharen Haskel the same.
You know, I'm just talking to you, and I'm remembering that spectacle that the opposition did in your committee, where they got up, they climbed up on the tables, and they sat down on the floor in the middle of the room, and they started screaming.
And they blocked voting, and they were shouting during voting. We had to get them out during voting and then they come back because they have to vote. They disrupted the way to run a committee in the Knesset. And of course, every time
was there ever any precedent for that kind of behavior anywhere in the Knesset history? Because we've had lots of, no disruption like that, right?
Unprecedented.
And who were they communicating? Why do you think that they did that? Because that was so shocking. We have these images on primetime television. What was his name? Yuri something from Yesh Atid, one of
Yorai Lav Artzano.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is just so you guys understand, right? They talk about democracy. Every single one of the Yesh Atid MKs is hand-selected by these businessmen who run Yesh Atid. They do auditions for them and stuff. So they have these people. They have no accountability to the public. And except that, because the public just votes because Yesh Atid is the main opposition party. They want the left to be in charge. So they vote for Yesh Atid without any understanding.
There is no primaries election.
No primaries, no accountability if we're talking about that. But anyway, so they get up. This is part of the whole breaking the rules and not accepting
breaking the rules.
You're elected to Knesset and you're saying that the Knesset is illegitimate. I mean, that's what's also crazy.
And some of them actually said it. They said it very, very, very
openly.
They were out saying the Knesset cannot accept this law. Now, I can accept the argument in some philosophical level saying that the major change needs to have constitutional majority. Not in Israel, because that's not the rule in Israel.
And we don't have a constitution.
And we don't have a constitution. But at the theoretical level, makes some sense.
Wait, why did
when they were in power just recently, they had a committee, only coalition, to decide on basic laws without the opposition. They formed it without the coalition to try. Now, when I started, and they said, no, he does not let us speak. When I started a committee dealing with those issues, I said, listen, I don't want to bring forward my offer. I want us to sit as members of the Constitution, Law and Justice Committee, which are usually serious people that understand constitutional law. The Knesset members that choose to go there are serious Knesset members usually. And they want to have a serious talk about this issue. I told them I don't want to put forward my offer. Let's talk about the problems and let's try to raise a solution together in the coalition opposition, because that's the best way to do it. I got a letter from the opposition. They will boycott the hearings in the committee until I bring forward a text of my own. I told them, okay, if you want to see my offer, I'll write my offer. And then they said, we're boycotting the hearings in the committee until the legal advisor will say what he thinks about your offer. Okay, you want to wait? Well, we waited another week until the legal advisor wrote what they think about it. And then they said, no, we will not talk about this issue until Justice Minister Levin will come here and tell us what he's planning for the next 4 years. They did not want to have any hearings or discussions concerning any reform. Not one, not this, not our version. And also, I offered in the draft that I put forward, that said, you put forward an extreme draft. What you offered is extreme. I told them, you know why I brought this? I agree, it's extreme. I agree. What I put forward is extreme. You know the reason? Because that's what you voted on last Knesset. Let's start talking based on what. Let's start talking about what you, Gideon Saar, voted on last Knesset. How can you tell me that the law that you voted on is a non-starter? You can say you don't want it to be the final version. Okay, I agree with you. It's a little bit too extreme. And they said the truth does not matter anymore.
No. It reminds me of really, North Vietnamese negotiators in Paris talks with Henry Kissinger. I think for 4 years or something they sat and they argued over the size of the table. Because the idea was that they didn't, they wanted America to leave Vietnam and give it to them and surrender. And that was all they were going to do. And they didn't mind being outrageous because they had their totalitarian mindset. They knew exactly what they wanted, and they really are behaving like North Vietnamese.
So people ask me, what will be the end? I don't know the end, but I know what won't be in the end. People now in Israel understand that there is zero legitimacy for a court that is unelected by the public in some way. Unaccountable, or with the people does not have a say who gets in, which that's the case today. Zero legitimacy for this kind of court to touch the law book, to say I'm canceling this law, I am amending this law. Zero. If we will have a court that is elected democratically, that appointed democratically, like most democratic countries around the world elect their judges, then we can talk about judicial review of legislation based on basic laws or based on the constitution or based on other issues. There is no legitimacy to give this power to unelected court. That's tyranny.
That's what we have now.
And that's what
exactly what we have.
And that's what we have now. And the public understands now it's illegitimate. Again, even the president offer, which was extreme left, understood that and said, the veto that sitting judges has on who will get in, it's not legitimate.
All right, let's change gears for just a second. So I don't want to leave this issue, frankly, because I still haven't understood how any of this is going to get passed. You're saying essentially, let me say what I think you said and tell me if I'm right, and then fill in the blanks. So what you're saying is that, if we don't get to an agreement with the at the president's office, that the president
we'll go forward.
We'll go forward. And are you going to go forward with a proposal that you had before? Is it going to,
Maybe depends. The offer, by the way, what we had in the last stop on judicial selection is extremely moderate. People, it doesn't matter what we say. People will say it's extreme, but actually it's moderate.
It's minimalistic. I thought it was too little.
It prevents any ability to pack the court that exists in many other countries. In the U.S., we cannot pack the court. All the suspicions that were raised during the demonstration or in committee room were dealt with. It allows the Knesset majority to make sure that people are not being blocked unjustly from being joining the court, but does not let any specific coalition to take over the court. Prevents it.
Well, that's too bad.
And no, I think when you build a system, never assume that you will always be in the coalition.
That's the whole point, right? I mean, that the left wins an election, they get their guys in the court. The right wins. I mean, that's how it is in America.
Yeah, I know, but the system today is not like that. The system today is that when the left is in power, he can appoint whoever he wants, and when the right is in power, he can appoint whatever the left wants.
Exactly.
So that needs to change, and that's my system doing. It does not let an hostile takeover, meaning pack the court, is out of the question, because that's a problem also in the U.S. and other places. If you want to play by the rules, you can appoint 2 judges on your coalition majority at a single Knesset time. If you win election after election after election after election, then you are basically the consensus of the state of Israel. Then you can appoint more judges.
So let me just change gears for a second. We've had, because of the way that this has been communicated to Diaspora Jewry, and the way that Yair Lapid has gone to the United States and met with American Jewish leaders and congressional leaders to try to incite them to believe that the democracy of Israel is now on the line, and that reforms that place minimal limits on the power of Israel's justices is somehow going to turn us into a democracy when all it's going to do is cancel an existing oligarchy. We are now seeing a lot of open tensions between the government and the diaspora Jewish leadership, particularly, of course, in the United States. And then it's also sort of played into other issues like immigration law, the law of return. If we want to place restrictions on, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is also sort of a judicial interpretation of the law that lets people who have one Jewish grandparent to get automatic citizenship. So that's something that your party, the National Religious Party, wanted to cancel. So what is your message on both judicial reform and also on the law of return for Diaspora Jewry that thinks, that you're Mr. Evil?
So first, on the judicial reform, I like to quote Alan Dershowitz, which objects to the program.
I had him on the program. I was disappointed by him, but yeah.
But he said, I don't agree, but even if everything that Levin and Rothman wants to do will happen, Israel will still be a democracy. And it will be a democracy, not like in the U.S., but it will be a democracy like New Zealand or like Great Britain, or some ways like Canada. So there are things in the reform that when you talk to the American audience, they tell you, of course, judicial selection should be within the public power. And we appoint it with the president and the Senate. You should appoint it with the minister in the Knesset. Why not? So it does not make anything as the same thing with the chief legal advisor. Of course, his advice cannot be binding to the government. Why would they? So the American audience understand. Override clause, which is part of the reform, seems a little bit strange to American audience. Will say, if the court says it's unconstitutional, how can you override it? But if you go across the border to Canada, they say, oh, of course, we have override. We just use it in Ontario and Quebec just recently. So that's the judicial reform. And I think that exactly what you said, some people badmouth the state of Israel with the American Jewry in a very unresponsible and untruthful way.
You keep saying that it's going to turn into a religious theocracy.
It has nothing to do with religious theocracy.
Okay, why not?
No, because the majority of the state of Israel, even the religious people, do not want a religious theocracy. That's why Israel will not become a religious theocracy. Okay, and this coalition that apparently is once religious theocracy elected the first gay speaker to the Knesset. Right. So a very good friend of mine, Amir Ohana, and even the ultra-Orthodox voted for him. So apparently it's not on the table. And the fact that people are talking about it, it's basically, I don't have better word than lie. It's a lie, and it's a vicious lie, because it has nothing to do with reality and all the legislation that this government wants to push forward. Now, that's about the judicial reform. Israel will stay a vibrant democracy, even if everything passes.
How a vibrant democracy.
And it will solve one of the major problems with its democracy if it passes. Okay. So that's about the judicial reform. Again, about the grandson clause.
Of the law of return.
Of the law of return, exactly the same kind of, maybe we do have some problem with Hasbara in Israel, because it's so easy to badmouth us. So let's just a little bit talk about the issue and understand the problems and the solutions. So first, in Israel, in the original law of return, grandsons of Jews who are non-Jews were not able to get to Israel through the law of return. If you're a Jew, you're accepted. If you're immediate family of a Jew, a spouse or son or daughter, then you can get in through the law of return. If not, you can come. It's not that you are banished from the state of Israel, but you cannot get the benefits of an ole. You are not ole through the law of return. You can sometimes get in through the citizenship law, like a regular immigrant from other countries, but you are not getting the benefit of being an ole. Okay. We have some financial benefits. Israel actively looking to bring more Olim. We are not actively looking to bring people through the citizenship law. It's a difference. In the 1970s, because of a ruling of the Supreme Court about, of course, it created a problem. They made some compromises. They changed a little bit the definition of what constitutes a Jew, and also allowed for grandson of a Jew to be eligible to make Aliyah. And the law makes a specification. It says some people are Jewish, some people are non-Jewish, but they're eligible to come according to law of return. It's called Zakai Shvut. They're eligible for return. They're non-Jews. It created a lot of problems, but most of them, like 100% of them, has nothing to do with American Jewry. Most of the people that come from, most I'm talking about 96 or 97% of the people that come and make Aliyah from the U.S. are Jewish themselves, are recognized as Jews. The rest are either spouses or children of Jews that making Aliyah with them. There are almost zero people that come from the U.S. and make Aliyah that they are non-Jewish, their parents are non-Jewish, only their grandparents are Jewish.
One grandparent.
Only one grandparent. Because if it's the mother side, grandmother, it's not a problem. Right. They're Jewish by themselves, of course. Even according to halachic, the most strict halachic standard. But it's not even that. I'm not getting into details, but even if you are not Jewish, it's not the rabbinate that decides. If you're some people are considered Jews and make Aliyah from the U.S. or other countries, and they're not recognized as Jews by the rabbinate, by the Orthodox rabbinate in Israel. They will still be eligible for the law of return. There is no equal fine there. So that's the situation. And when you talk about American Olim, when you talk about Olim from France or from Great Britain, from South America, we're talking about 96, 97% that are making Aliyah because they're Jewish, and immediate families are the rest of 3-5%. Not a problem. When you go to former Soviet Union countries, the numbers change drastically. When you talk about former for Russia or Ukraine, even before the crisis, Moldova, other places.
Like last year, 70% of them?
70% are non-Jews, most of them grandsons. And the original Jew, originally the law was planned that if someone makes Aliyah, you will not force him to break the family. He can come and bring his grandson and children to make Aliyah together. The father never made Aliyah. The Jewish grandfather never made Aliyah. The Jewish father never made Aliyah. The grandson, and he comes. Now, even if he would come and be intertwined in the society in Israel, maybe half a problem. They're not, and some big percentage, large percentage of them, not even stay in Israel. They come, they take the benefits, and they leave to other countries, or even return to Russia or to Ukraine or to Moldova. More than 40% of the people who come, they don't really want to be here. They come for the benefit, and they don't even stay here. And the numbers are amazing. And
what kind of numbers are we talking about?
More than 40%.
No, but
more than 40% of the Olim. So the three largest Aliyah, I can say it like that. More people every year, come from Russia and Ukraine and their former Soviet Union countries that do not want to make Aliyah, and their grandsons are non-Jews, and returning to those countries than all the Olim from the U.S. and France and Britain together.
So why is it?
So it's mistakes of the law of return. It's cost us a lot of money. It's cost us a lot of effort that we don't invest in making Aliyah easier for English speakers or French speakers, or that comes from France or from the U.S. or from England.
So why do you think that everybody?
It's to waste.
But why do you think that everybody is thinking that this is a racist government that is going to war against Diaspora Jewry for theocratic reasons or fascist reasons or whatever? What do you say to somebody who says, "Oh, Simcha Rothman, you're a fascist. You hate you hate diaspora Jewry. How do you even begin to approach that, given what you're talking about? It has nothing to do with them.
So first, we need to understand. I think it's about time that both sides of the ocean will understand it. We love, really, we love American Jewry. We love diaspora Jews. We know that their politics is very, very different from our politics. And again, of course, there are growing numbers of Orthodox, the Jews in the U.S., the numbers are growing. We know, and some people in Israel needs to adjust to the fact that American Jews are not only Reform or conservative. They're diverse, and the numbers of the Orthodox are growing for many reasons. But put that aside for a second. Even Reform communities, conservative communities, or other people that want connection with the state of Israel. If you're a Jew living outside of Israel and you want connection with the state of Israel, we want connection with you. That's the first thing I want to say, and it should be very, very simple. And I fought a lot during COVID that I offered that anyone who's eligible according to the law of return to come to Israel and make Aliyah will be able to come to Israel without any limit. And I thought about it again until when I became a Knesset member when COVID was almost over. So we changed the law altogether and we stopped the problem altogether. But I fought for it. I spoke about it a lot because I think that it is your homeland. If you're a Jew outside of Israel that's seeking connection with the land of Israel, I'm with you and I want this. But I know that my politics is not exactly your cup of tea. Please keep in mind that the other way around, it's also true. And let's try to respect each other and not change each other, especially not in ways that are not that we don't like. And I think that this message is important. American Jews invest a lot of money and invest a lot in policy. Many of the demonstrations that we see on the street are heavily funded by American Jews who does not like Israeli government. So, of course, I will never say to an American Jew who wants to influence the state of Israel, don't do it, you are not welcome here. But keep in mind that respect has to be mutual. I don't think that they will like the person that donates a lot of money to an organization in Israel who wants to change Israeli society in a drastic or extreme way. I don't think he would appreciate if Israel will invest a lot of money in his community in order that his children will not be like him. I don't think he will like it. He wants, therefore, the mutual respect, I think, needs to be achieved. Today, some people do not respect the fact that Israel...
I mean, you're talking about a left in Israel and a left in the United States. You're seeing increasingly is not respecting the rules of the game. And
I know. And I'm calling for respect. I wish I try my best to respect the fact that people in the U.S. not always think the way I think about issues. I try to not, when I go to the U.S., not to be partisan even on, especially not Democrat and Republican, but even within the Jewish society, not try to take sides, to tell every Jew that lives in diaspora, this is his homeland, and he was welcome here. And I even said in an interview, even before I ran to Knesset, and one of the issues that creates a lot of tension is what's happening in the Kotel, right? That some people say we want the Kotel to be more welcoming to Reform Jews. I said, please make it hard for me as a politician. If there would be a new million Olim that are Reform, that come to Israel and have with their communities, and we'll have million Reform Jews that make Aliyah to Israel, and it will be a significant number, and then they will say, oh, we are such a significant number of people in Israel. We want a place near the Kotel. Let's solve this problem when we see it. When we have the majority of the people who make Aliyah from the U.S. are Orthodox, the majority of the Jews in Israel are Orthodox. There is a small minority. They need to be respected, but they cannot take over the Kotel for this small minority. If we'll have a large enough a group of people that are Reform Jews, let's solve this problem then. And it's a problem that I will be happy to have, that Israel have so many new Olim that are Reform Jews, that we need to address what will happen with the chief rabbinate when we'll have 1 million Reform Jews in Israel. It will be a problem. We need to solve it. Let's have this problem. Let's have all of them come to Israel, be a tourist in Israel, make aliyah to Israel, and then we'll solve this problem.
And I think that the best way to solve this problem, when there are 1 million Reform Jews from the United States and Israel, is through the Knesset and not through the Supreme Court.
That's definitely the case.
Okay, well, listen, I think we're going to have to leave it at that. I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and I guess you've made me more optimistic about judicial reform. The need is so pressing.
It's contagious.
I'm not willing to engage in optimism unnecessarily. So I appreciate it. It's a challenge, okay, but you're pretty secure that the government, by hook or by crook, it's going to happen.
And again, optimism is important. We need to work as if I'm wrong, to try to push forward as much as we can. But I have to tell you, when I started Meshilut, the Israeli movement for governability and democracy, 10 years ago, I thought it would take, to get to the stage that we are, public awareness and willingness to make the change, I thought it will take 30 years. It took 10 years. I am very optimistic when you zoom out in the big picture, I'm very, very optimistic.
All right. Well, member of Knesset, Simcha Rothman, the chairman of the Committee for the Constitution, Law, and Justice Committee in the Knesset, very important guy. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you. All right. And thank you guys, and we'll see you next week. Take care.